one of my pet peeves is when agents sign that contract and then think that they don't still need to treat that consumer as though they're in an active stage of nurture.
Mm-hmm.
And that there's a really big reminder that even though the contract is signed and the business is protected, your obligation and your responsibility and your job is to continue the relationship with the client throughout the process with a really great tight set of follow-up and touches and continuing to build the relationship and the rapport. So making sure that understanding protected business doesn't mean that you're not still doing the same level of follow-up and nurture.
For sure. I could not agree more with that. And a great hack that I got this from my mentor when I was my first year in the business is we have an Excel spreadsheet, right? Or now Google Sheets. It's a list of all the active listings that you have, right? It's no different than the top prospects sheet. Although you really got to call these people. It's probably more important to call them because what's the biggest complaint, Lisa, about real estate agents?
We ghost. We're not great at communicating.
Yes, they don't hear from them. Number one, according to NAR. So you've got, and knowledge brokers, what they do is they'll set this expectation at the appointment. Hey, the minimum you're going to be hearing from me is X, whatever it is. I'd recommend 7 to 10 days. I think that's a fair range because sometimes you take a listing in the higher end, there might not be anything happening for a week, right? I mean, that's just how it is. So if you the minimum you're going to hear from me on the phone with a phone call, text and email does not cut it.
Don't count.
And agents rely too heavily on that. You've got to have a conversation. Even if you're leaving a detailed voicemail and they don't call you back and text you, at least there's some inflection there. I would always make sure I'm calling at least once a week. I would block out 2 hours on a Thursday because if I needed a price adjustment, I could get it before the weekend. And I would just sit there, go down the list. I would pick my least favorite seller first and get that out of the way. I'd eat the frog, right?
Yep.
And some of these conversations are going to be more difficult than others. The easier ones, maybe you time block time when you're driving around in your car. That's a great way to gain some traction there. And you've got to know the following stats: number of showings, online views, feedback. And you don't have to, the feedback can be general. I mean, if you get something wonky, you can certainly talk to them about that. I'd be leaning on showing time and realtor.com traffic reports, as well as Zillow saves. Those are all great things to show people and just share them with them. Hey, here's the numbers. Here's what we got. We can tell the marketing's working by this. Here's what the buyers have said, whatever it is, and just communicate it with them and then have a next plan of attack. And sometimes you got to tell them, Lisa, hey, Lisa, right now we've been on the market 7 days. We've had 10 people through. The feedback's been pretty strong and we're getting some great online views. Let's stay the course and see what happens over the next 7 days. And I'm going to continue to work through what I'm doing to generate more activity. Showing traffic's been great. That means the marketing's been working. The feedback is telling us what buyers are thinking. And let's let it play out a little bit. And if you do that, it shows you're on their side and you're not just immediately going for a price adjustment. At the same time, I have this hallucination that a lot of agents don't know how to get price adjustments. And that could cause listings to start to expire and come off the market because of the inability to have tough conversations with sellers and not know what to say. I saw this on a Tom Ferry Elite post today. Someone said, help, my listing's not selling. I need outside the box ideas. And you know what I said? It's time for a price adjustment. Period. And it was like, oh, it's not the price. It's always the price if you're marketing the home correctly. Now, that's an assumption, right? You got to have the right photos, room dimensions, description, video, all that stuff. It's typically the price.
Almost always. And I think, again, kind of tying back into some of the pivots, I think pricing strategy is going to matter. It's fascinating. You just kind of used the benchmark of 7 days. And I think back to 2019 when
it was like 30.
Right. And I think it's going to be so crazy fascinating to watch how that shakes out. You have a suspicion about expired listings. I have a suspicion about canceled listings.
I group them the same. I should say I always, it's one big group for me because something went wrong. Keep going.
I suspect what we're going to see is that there's not just a lack of skill or ability to have conversations about price adjustments. I'm going to guess that not all agents are going to do a great job future pacing sellers to be able to understand the realities of the market, which is going to create a lot of consumer frustration with an agent who didn't set the expectation that 7 days is no longer the norm and that it might be 30 to 45 days, but also understanding 30 to 45 days is still insanely fast, all things considered within a real estate market. But if we don't set that expectation with the consumer up front, I think we're going to find that some consumers are just going to be like, peace, I'm done. I want an agent who can get the job done much faster. So I think we're going to see a lot of broken contracts in terms of cancellations as well.
I feel like this is a listing masterclass we are giving right now for how to deal with listings prior to 2020, because this is all the stuff that, I mean, I have these conversations. I'm on the phone, and some of them are like, "Well, this happened," and I'm looking at the photos, and it looks like it was an iPhone 5 that took the photo, and there's no. I mean, people, good markets create weak skill sets. We've talked about this, and on the listing side especially. So this is going to be really fascinating here. I'd love to hear in the comments where people are getting listings from right now and some of the challenges that they're running into. So drop a comment there. We can maybe answer it next week on the pod.